There was a lot of damage on this frame. Every single corner had pieces missing. This is a very old frame. It's absolutely stunning. It's some kind of a plaster resin material. So I decided I would go ahead and hide them. So I pulled out my paper clay. My brand of choice is the Creative brand. It is my favorite all time. That I love the most. I've tried so many of them. And I pulled out one of my Redesign with Prima molds. These molds are no longer available. I sold out of them and they are no longer available from Prima. You would have to find one from a retailer online somewhere. So basically, I'm going to take the paper clay. I'm going to mold some new pediments for the corners, and I am going to make those cracks disappear because there's no way that I could replicate what was there previously. And now in hindsight, I should have got this a little more bendable. So I basically should have bent it more in my hands and kind of warmed it up and kneaded it. But I just threw it right in. So it made it harder to spread out. There was a big glop of it. Just make sure when you're doing molds that you actually add some cornstarch to your mold first. This will help prevent sticking in your mold. So, like I said, it would have been a little more pliable if I had warmed it up in my hands and kind of kneaded it. That was my bad, but it was a long day. So, just take a putty knife, make sure that you get all of it in every corner and every crevice, and just keep working it. Yeah, I look like a novice molder on this video doing this, but this is to show you that sometimes even somebody that has done hundreds of molds doesn't think sometimes, and I should have really kneaded it because it's so thick. It would have made it more pliable and warmed it up kind of in my hands. This was not a warm day. I mean, it was semi-warm, but it wasn't super warm in the store. So I needed to kind of get it a little more pliable. So just take a putty knife, spread it out to the edges. Obviously, I did get it to work eventually, but it shouldn't have taken so long. And then make sure that your edges are nice and crisp. And that way you can ensure that your mold will demold, unmold really nice and crisp. If your edges are super like overlays of the clay and stuff, you'll see that and it'll look just kind of sloppy. Be honest, kind of sloppy. If you have any holes anywhere, just go ahead and add some more clay. It'll kind of just go ahead and work with the rest of it, and just keep using your putty knife. Stretch that stuff out, take off any excess that's on there. Pretty soon it'll be smooth on the back side. There's no excess hanging over the sides. It's a pretty crisp mold. Then just start to bend. These are silicone molds. There's no other product needed in them to get that to work besides some cornstarch. Just a little bit of cornstarch is all you need. And then unmold, and you have this gorgeous pediment that I'm going to stick on every single corner. Every corner. Debbie, point the camera down so we can see what you're doing. So I'm just going to make 4 of them, trying to figure out how I want to lay them up. Aha, there we go. And the thing about the paper clay, unlike resin, is it's very pliable. So I will have time, and I'm going to glue right over that hole. I don't care. I'm going to have time to make the other 4, and then I'm going to glue them all down at once. And then we're going to let them dry overnight, and then we're going to paint. It's as easy as that. So paper clay is a great, great, great product to use in the molds. You can also use the 2-part epoxy resin. Personally, I like paper clay better. I like the way that it bends, it molds, and I like the fact that it cracks. A lot of people don't like that, but I like the crack. You know why? Because this is an antique frame. It isn't supposed to look brand new. So this time, look at me. I'm going to go ahead and put it in my hand. Make a little more pliable to start with. Get it a little bit warmed up and help me to actually get the mold made much quicker than the first one. So we are going to repeat this process times 4 and get them all done, and then we're just going to glue them. Now all I use is just regular wood glue. I like the Tight Bond Quick and Thick because it's not super runny. I love that glue just for the simple fact I use it for everything. This frame is wooden, but that's not why I use wood glue. That's just what I use for my furniture all the time, and I have it handy. You could use probably any white glue to adhere them. It really doesn't matter, but you just need a good, strong white glue. If you get it and it actually bubbles out over the sides when you glue it onto your piece, it'll dry clear. It's going to be glue. So take your putty knife, rub it over the top. This one didn't take me as long to do because I had worked the paper clay beforehand. Silly girl. Sometimes I wonder. It's like, girl, don't you know what you're doing after all this time? And so basically I just wipe it clean and then start working on the edges. And there's little holes in this thing, like where the goes in. And when I rub my putty knife for the top, it will just, the excess clay will come off. I just keep putting it in my hand and I'll reuse it for the next mold. So how I store my clay is I put it in a Ziploc bag with a damp paper towel inside of it so that it stays moist longer. It will dry up if you don't have something damp in there. It likes, don't get it wet, but just let it stay damp. So we're going to unmold this one. We've pretty much got it all cleaned up. Looks pretty snazzy. All the excess clay is off. We're going to go ahead and just keep turning it and working it. So we're going to just gently kind of roll the mold, roll with that mold, and then where it's just boom. And look at how pretty this mold is. So fun. Love this mold so much.
So now we're going to take what we molded and we are going to add some glue to the back. I actually just like to use wood glue because I have it on hand. And I am using, my favorite is Tight Bond Quick and Thick because it's a thicker glue. It doesn't run all over the place. I'm just spreading it over the back of that. Now remember, we just molded these, so they're very pliable. It's wet clay. I glue it, I just stick it down. Just take your finger and press gently. It will not ruin the integrity of the design on the clay. It will not make it go bad. It won't ruin it. It won't do anything. Just add the glue, put it on, and let it dry. Now, the beauty of this clay that I use, the Creative brand, is that it actually will crack. I love the fact that it gives me cracks because guess what? This is not a brand new frame. This is a vintage antique frame. If it was pristine and I added the molds, it would look kind of funky. It wouldn't really match. So I don't mind that it cracks. And I will tell you with this bigger pieces like this pediment, it's a lot of clay. So it just depends how quickly it dries. So if you're in a really hot area and it dried really fast, it might crack more. Whereas it might be a little bit slower in some other areas. So I did all four corners. That way they'll all match. Nobody will ever know. So then we're going to paint. I went ahead and grabbed a gorgeous color. This paint is called Blush. It is by a manufacturer called Mud Paint. I do carry this paint in my store, but grab any paint. Any kind of good quality chalk or clay-based paint will work just fine. I just happen to retail 5 or 6 paint brands, so those are the ones that I love and use. So this is Mud Paint in the color Blush. Like I said, use any paint of your choosing. I went ahead and going to just put a real quick coat down, and I will end up doing 2 coats on this. There's a lot of detail in this frame, and this is the next day. So I did let those molds on the corners dry overnight. So they are good and dry. I don't like to paint over the clay immediately because what will happen is it'll get, the clay will get really a little bit more moisture in it than I like. And then I'll dislodge it and I'll move it because it hasn't adhered. Until it dries and forms to the piece, it's really not, attached permanently. So I'm using my 040 Klingon brush, which is my absolute favorite brush of all times and never loses a bristle. Like I said, I have all this stuff on my website. If you'd like to order it, tonatransformations.com. I carry all these supplies. I ship out next day or same day, depending on when you order. So I'm just going to go and swirl it around so I can really get into all that detailing. As you can tell, when I'm adding the pink, do you notice that the detailing kind of disappears? Because currently on the frame, the detailing is, you can see it because it's got various colors. Well, we're going to fix that. So don't worry. because right now when I paint over it, you can't see all the grooves and stuff, right? I had at one time painted this frame a long time ago and then just never used it, and then it just kind of started to break. So repairs are done, painting's getting on, just swirling my brush around. What this does is make sure that I can get into all the nooks and crannies and get down in there. We are going to layer the paint on this. We're going to add a glaze, and what that's going to do is really, really help with the look of this gorgeous frame. So we've done 2 coats. Now we are taking a cream color. I am using Dixie Belle's Sawmill Gravy. It is a off-white creamy color that will just enhance this frame. So I'm just going to go ahead and dry brush. I am just taking my brush and floating it across all the sticked up areas. Sticked up, that's not what a word, the raised areas. So a little bit of paint. I dip my brush in the paint and then I offload it, meaning I kind of put it on a raw spot, and then I wipe it on a paper towel. What that does is make my brush rather dry, and that way, paint, offload, paper towel. Okay? That makes it so that when I run that fat-headed brush over the top of those raised areas, basically the only thing that gets painted is the raised areas. This is a great way to bring back that detail. Remember, I was just mentioning that the detail got lost? Well, the detail is coming back, but it's really going to come back full force here in about 2 minutes when we go ahead and add some glaze. I wanted to do a little bit of a lighter color first, and then I'm going to glaze it, and then I'm going to go back over and do a lighter color again. I just wanted there to be a variation in colors when I did this, okay? So I'm just going to keep adding a little bit more of that Sawmill Gravy, like it is an off-white with leans a little to the gray white color, just slightly. This is a Dixie Belle product. Any kind of, like I said, any brand of chalk paint you want to use. It doesn't have to be the ones I'm using, but it's the ones I have on hand. And like I said, I also retail them. So we're just going to dry brush all the way around this. Keep going. And with a dry brushing, it dries very, very fast, meaning your brush does not have a lot of paint on it. So it's the easiest way to get a little bit of paint just into the details and just float it on across. It's gorgeous, actually. It's starting to look really, really pretty. So here's the fun part. So I have taken some glaze. If you're not familiar with this, glaze is a medium. You can get it from a variety of companies, or you can make it yourself. So it is a translucent, it's not actually a paint. It does have paint in it, but it is a translucent, relatively thin material that when you apply, you then wipe off and wipe back. And what it does is it sits within all the grooves and all the little valleys on this frame. Remember when I said I took away all the detailing? I'm adding it back in. I'm trying to get you guys as close as I could. I'm just using a baby wipe. So I will do this in sections. Here's the thing, the glaze will dry and it will seal your piece. So you've got to make sure that you do it in sections at a time, whether you're doing it on a piece of furniture, on a frame, or anything. But pieces that have all this high detail like this really, really, really benefit from adding glaze because it's sitting all inside. See the pediment we put on the corner? It's sitting all in there. It's giving it that antique look. I just happened to pick a gray because I thought it went really well with the pink. And see the glaze. Isn't it pretty? See how it just sits in there? So the frame was just kind of pink and monotone. We added a little bit of the Sawmill Gravy, then we added some glaze. Now we're going to let it dry. And we're going to let it dry for quite some time because we want that to be very, very dry and done. So I'm coming back the next day. I'm going to go ahead and finish this off by just dry brushing a little bit more white. I want that to pop a little bit. I don't want it to be dull. So what I did is I just grabbed some of my white from Dixie Belle. It's a fluff. It's not their brightest white. It's just a little bit of a off white. I'm just running my brush over those raised areas once again. So it's all about layers, you guys. Layers and just waiting and doing the next layer. It's really worth it when you take the time to do the layers, because the layers is what gives it the look. Same thing we did when we used the sawmill gravy. Load the brush, offload the brush, and wipe it off on a paper towel. That's the best way to get a brush that is dry. It also helps that my brushes are really fat. If you have a brand new Klingon brush, it may not be as fat as this. It'll still do the same thing because they are super soft. Another recommendation I would tell you is there is a brush that Dixie Belle makes. It is a natural bristle brush. It is called the Best Dang brush. I do have them in stock. They are a fat-headed brush to begin with and super soft. They also do this really, really well. It's the only other brush I have found to work just as well. Since my Klingons are 7 years old, they are fat at the top, so they make the fat head, you know, it's already on the brush because I've used them for 7 years. It just takes time for your brushes to get like that. I love that they're like that because it helps with dry brushing. It helps with blending and all the fun things. So basically that's it. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I may wipe back a little bit of it to get the gold to show through. I may not. You know, sometimes I just kind of go back and forth. You could also add some gilding wax and gold if you wanted to enhance this. But look at how pretty. Can you see the before and after? Before on the right and before on the left. Now it's all. And then it's just that white just ties it all together. And we're not talking a lot. So the gray, the sawmill gravy, it's all about the layers. So I mean, I could have skipped that step with the sawmill gravy, but I just like the layers. And you can see what a difference just a little bit of white. You don't have to put the white on if you don't want to. But from far away, this thing is stunning. I can go grab a mirror now and throw it in there and make it a mirror, but you know, frames look really good on walls just like that. So don't forget to please subscribe to my channel, and if you would like any of the supplies, I do carry all of them in my store. You can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. It's Tona Transformations. Thanks for watching. Go out and be fabulous.